I'll give everyone a... Okay, we're doing good on that. Yeah, come see Zabel. It's a lot of flat markers in this section too. It's definitely a different year for it. Thank you, Jenny, too. Jenny they put the flags out for veterans, which was really nice. And good with the flat markers for identifying. So we're going to take a moment. We're going to talk about Walter and Ada Zabel. They were another well-known family in Niles in the mid 20th century here. Walter Zabel was born in Sturgis in 1891. He went to University of Michigan. That seems to be another theme on this tour, U of M graduates. He served in the he was a second lieutenant in the artillery during World War I, so he was a veteran. He moved to Niles in 1919, so shortly after discharge from the military. He was a longtime teacher and administrator at Niles Community Schools, too. He originally started as a math teacher at the high school. In 1922, he was junior high school principal. He had that post for 2 years, and then he became principal and athletic director of the senior high school. He served in that capacity for like 24 years. He actually postponed his retirement for a year because in the 50s they were building the current high school, and he kind of oversaw the school during that period. So he actually postponed retirement for that time. He retired in 57, a year after the school opened. According to his obit, during his time as principal, Mr. Zabel saw the graduation of 5,444 students. So over that time, we saw a well-known person in the community. He was a basketball manager at Niles for 33 years. At the time of his death, it was the longest continuous service of any tournament manager in the state, they claim at that time. So he received praise from the Michigan High School Athletic Association for some of his excellence at the Niles tournaments. He died in 1975. In 1922, he married Ada. Milligan was her maiden name. She was born in 1889. She had a master's degree in English. She taught at the Niles schools for a year, and she was actually involved in a number of those organizations, those women's clubs at this time, including the American Association of University Women and the Ladies Reading Club. She died in 1963. They had 2 children. One daughter is actually behind us here, sorry, Haley, right there. Her name was Dr. Jane Zabel Waxman. She was born in 25. She was actually valedictorian of her Niles High School class in 1943. She attended the University of Michigan. Following her father. She had a Bachelor of Science in 46. She became a Doctor of Medicine in 1949. She went to Syracuse University Medical School. That's where she met her husband, David Waxman, there. The family later moved to Missouri. She had a private practice. She was a pediatric doctor. She was the first woman president of the Kansas City Pediatric Society. After 25 years in that private practice, she actually moved to an outpatient practice with the military as well. And she worked in Missouri and later in Kansas. She received the Commander's Award for Civilian Service and the Department of the Army Civilian Award. She retired in 1993. She did die in 2009, and she is buried here by her parents. So that is the Zabel family. Next, we're going to talk about the Quimbys, and then we'll be heading back to the mausoleum. So we're going to go right where those cute little flowers are in that vase. That's our Quimby. Right.
I don't know about a lot.
While everyone gathers, I'll take a sip of my water. Okay, so buried here are Alice and Charles Quimby. They were siblings. And Alice Quimby was born in 1877, and Charles was born he was a little older, 1874. Their parents were Captain Horace Quimby and Martha Jenny, they called her, Smith Quimby. Alice is connected to a collection that we actually have at the museum now, so I thought I would highlight her a little bit. Captain Quimby actually served in the military. He served out in New Hampshire during the Civil War, but he stayed in the military after as well. In the 1880s, he was the quartermaster of Fort Randall in the Dakotas, and his family actually went and lived with him for a time out in Fort Randall. While they were out in Fort Randall, they apparently got to know Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull was born in 1831. He gained international fame for his major victories in battle and his leadership to stand against assimilation during the late 1800s, 1870s there. He was chief of the Lakota Nation, and he actually led a series of battles against the U.S. government to protect his people and his land. He was eventually forced to surrender, and in the early 1880s, he was transferred to Fort Randall, where he stayed for 2 years. So the Quimbys were at Fort Randall at the same time as Sitting Bull. The story goes that the wife and the kids actually got to know him. They would go visit with him, and they would bring him stuff from time to time. They would see him drawing pictographs, which are actually a Lakota tradition. It's how they tell some of their history. And they presented him with a military ledger book and asked if he would be willing to draw them some pictographs. So he completed 12 of them and presented them to the family before they left. A year later, they left Fort Randall. After they left, Horace Quimby died in 1883. The family moved to the Niles area. They had ties to the Niles area already, so they moved back here. They lived at a house on Main Street in Niles, across from the Niles District Library. It's on Main and 7th Streets. That blue house today, it's still standing. There's actually a picture of it on the tablet, right across from the rotunda, and that was their family home. Later, it was bought by the Maxine Showers, and it became the Maxine Shop. If you're familiar in Niles, for a number of years, they had a shop in the community. Alice eventually loaned the pictographs to the Fort St. Joseph Museum, and then they were officially donated after her death in 1947. So they are part of the museum collection, and you can see them there and learn a little bit more about Sitting Bull's life and legacy and the Quimby family. So she's buried here with her brother Charles. As I mentioned, he was born in 1874. He had a shop downtown, the Quimby Dry Goods Shop. It was near the corner of Front and Main at 103 East Main. If you're familiar with current businesses in the community, it's where B. Crafty just moved into, literally less than a couple days ago. It was part of the Dugan block, and we have a picture of it when it was the Dugan Dry Goods store. It was later the Quimby store as well. He died in 1944. Their parents are not buried here. They have another sister, though, who married a Montague, and she is buried in the cemetery, but not in this section. So, yep, that's some of them. All right, we're going to head back toward the mausoleum. We're going to highlight one more family on the way. Another well-known family in Niles during this